Now if I do it again, I'm faking it. Hey everybody, welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode 443 being recorded on March 29th, 2017. I'm Ryan Schrout.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
And I'm Alan Malpentano.
There we go. That's close enough. That's what we're going to call it. That's the beginning of the show. That's what we're going to do. Welcome back, everybody. It has been another week, apparently, in computer hardware, and apparently storage things happened. Not a whole lot else, but some storage things happened, I guess. I don't know. So we're going to talk to Alan for a little bit today.
Hey, we can talk about eventually, no glove, no love.
Excuse me?
I mean...
a Navy guy should know that at least.
No, we got plenty of gloves on the submarine.
Well, the assertion would be that if you don't...
sheepskin.
Never mind.
Gloves are textured.
We missed you last week, Josh. We missed you last week.
I missed being here. I miss feeling human, too.
Welcome to the show, everybody. So we do record the show for you to watch and view for your viewing pleasure at pcper.com/live on Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. You can come and hang out in the chat room and talk to us and yell at us and see what all the crap we screw up before the show actually starts recording and what's crap we screw up after the show's done recording. And if you need a little reminder, if you're never quite sitting in front of your computer Wednesday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern, you can sign up for a little mailing list at pcper.com/subscribe. You get this form here that basically asks for your name and email address. We send a notification beforehand to say, hey, we're going to do a podcast. Don't forget, dummy. And then you click on the link and you come visit us. And that's pretty much all there is to it. We also have our ongoing Patreon campaign, which I didn't bring a link up for, so you'll just have to picture it in your mind. Patreon.com/PCPer. Imagine Josh in a bathtub and
imagine
all of us sitting on a couch together.
You don't have to imagine. You have photographic evidence.
That's true. If you want it, there you go. That's even better. If you want to see the picture of Josh in the bathtub, you have to go to patreon.com/PCPer. And that is your ability to directly contribute to us if you think anything we do is worth a damn. And we greatly appreciate everybody who contributes to us through us there. And if you are a new Patreon patron, I was going to say subscriber. That's not right. If you're a new patron and you sign up during the live stream, I will call out your name and thank you on the stream. And if you increase your pledge, we'll do that as well. So I say now we jump into things to talk about. We've had this for too long. It was a review that had been sitting in our product had been sitting in our office for a while, and finally I made Sebastian do it. This is the Phononic HEX 2.0 Thermoelectric CPU cooler. I feel like we actually had a pretty good discussion about this product just when we saw the announcement come through.
Yep.
This is what it looks like. It's a pretty big heatsink, but you'll notice
USB port on it.
It has a USB port. It's got your standard 4-pin fan header. There is a fan inside this black shroud that moves air through the heatsink. And then there's the 6-pin PCI Express power connection as well. And you go,
makes the GPU on your CPU go faster.
Odd. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm not the scientist that invented Thermoelectric, as I don't think anybody is here, but it's not a simple heatsink. It's not just a normal heat pipe implementation.
It's pumping the heat away, if you know what I mean.
Actively.
Yes.
Right. And actually, the HEX 2.0 features an active-passive design, which is odd, but it is a combination of both of those. So the Thermoelectric solid-state heat pump actually moves the heat away from the CPU at the cost of additional electric and heat to some degree, right? And it's all a matter of what the balance is. Josh, did you have any experience with like thermoelectric coolers from like way back in the day? Because they were
back in
popular.
the day they were a lot more common because the TDPs of chips were much lower. So like the original K6 was a 29 to 35 watt TDP part, and so you could actually have a Peltier cooler that you didn't need to have a cooling plate on it. It could just sit on top of like the heat spreader of the the K6 or the Pentium 2 at the time, and it could handle that kind of heat, and it could lower it below ambient in certain cases. But then once TDPs got above 65 watts, and we're talking anything above that, the original I used that same cooler on one of the original Athlon Thunderbirds, I think running at 900 megahertz, and it wouldn't even boot up. The die would get so hot so fast, the Peltier couldn't handle that.
Interesting.
And so I talked to some guys, and they're like, well, actually what you'd need to do in that case is mod it, get like a 1/4-inch copper plate, put the Peltier on there, let that cool down for a little bit before you even boot up your computer, and then it'll work fine. It's like, well, that's a crappy idea, but it looks like in the design like this that they essentially did that. They've got a cold plate, and they've got the Peltier unit, and a whole lot more control on there than what we had back in 1997.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about this is it's not running the active stuff all of the time. I'm trying to make sure I have this right. That it only runs it when it needs to, and that's what the USB connection is for. So it's communicating with the software necessary to do that. Now, it's interesting because it's about the size of a normal not a normal heatsink, of a large heatsink, about like maybe I call it like a Mori-sized heatsink, right?
Yep.
But you do get a pretty solid amount of cooling capability in a compact setup that is somewhat suitable for small form factor implementations. Sure. Right. Anything where you couldn't get a self-contained water cooler running, you could get this running. And you can see in this photo here, how the fan is in the middle, drawing through one set of fins and pushing out through the other. It's a neat implementation.
It is still on the tall form factor.
It definitely is.
It's tall. It's just not, it's not like the typical Mori cooler that would run into the RAM on the system. And,
sure. It is
it's
small.
Not using a 140 mil cooler or anything.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's smaller than that, but smaller than a bread box. Bigger than an Intel stock cooler, as the saying goes. So Sebastian did this review. He did his testing on it, and I none of its results look particularly exciting. Here's a Core i5 6600K at stock, and it's not beating any of these, the Corsair H75 or even the Noctua NH-U9S necessarily. And it's got two modes, the standard mode and the insane mode, like cars do these days, I guess. And you can see at the overclock, even there, it's kind of like it's not as good as the Corsair H75, but it is definitely showing its advantages over the air cooler in that particular instance. So, and I want to say it's pretty pricey. Yeah, $148 at Amazon. So, it's... As Sebastian notes here, it's really good build quality. It's overkill for a stock CPU. High performance for its size, not high performance globally, but high performance for its size, and low noise output from the single 92 mil fan that they're using here. And the software works well. Weaknesses is cost and the usefulness, which is a fairly sizable weakness, depending on specific usage scenarios, right? So if you have a specific environment that this fits in, that you need something better than a stock or even a higher end air cooler can offer, it's an option for you, but you are going to pay for it. It's neat though to kind of see somebody integrate that all into one easy to use package. So cool stuff. Up next on our list, Lee, who stopped by the office today to drop off some goods and services.
Nice.
Actually, he didn't drop off any services. He was dropping off hardware for us to offer up for the VLAN prizes coming up in the next week and a half or 2 weeks or so, which I forgot to mention at the beginning of the show. Jeremy, this is your fault.
Yeah, I totally forgot to put that link in there.
Yeah, you did. We're having it's on April the 8th, right? Go to PCPro.com on the homepage, and you'll see a listing for the VLAN that we're having, which is the virtual LAN party that the forum guys put together, and it's always a lot of fun. And Jeremy, actually mention it. Just talk about it real quick about what it is and why people should be attending.
Well, it's a hell of a lot of fun for one reason. This one is kind of neat, excuse me, in that it's the 15th that we have done. And it is, strangely enough, 15 years more or less since the first time we did it. Actually, it was 14 years. It was 2003. But
it's close. It's close.
It's damn close, and it's been going on for a long time. Last time we averaged, I think, just over 60 guys all the time, but broke 90, 100 people easily. The list of games the last time I saw was 20 plus. So wow. If you head over to the forum and you sign up, just post into it. One, you let Lenny and the gang know that, hey, you're going to plan to at least try and show up for a bit to sit around and play games from 10 a.m. until whenever we finally drop. And you can also suggest any games you might want to play if for some reason it's not on our list already.
For shame.
Okay. So
cool.
If you can't, just head over, sign up, figure out how to get onto their TeamSpeak server. All of the information is put together by them. Join us on the 8th. It will be a hell of a lot of fun, and you might even win something. It might even be out of Josh's closet. For God's sakes.
A lightly used Hitachi One.
As long as it's signed.
Like genetically or with like a signature.
Yeah. His signature is all over it, I assure you.
Oh, dear Lord.
If you want to do any cloning, you'll have that capability.
Yes.
Oh.
Anyway, Lee stopped by, unrelated to the review that he posted of the Silverstone SFX 800 watt titanium unit here. So this is an SFX-L, which is small form factor, but slightly larger. Which always kind of...
In other words, normal size.
No, it's a plus size SFX.
It's small but lengthened.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
I see.
You know, but it is titanium certified, so there's that. I mean, if you look at it, it's still a small heat sink. It's still tiny. But we're getting up into kind of like ludicrous wattage capacities for these types of power supplies. 800 watts, 80 plus titanium efficiency is like amazing, especially again considering the small form factor. Usually you see those in like the larger devices because you can get some of the higher end, larger, more efficient components in there. 120 mil cooling fan. So that gives you an idea that the fan that you see installed there is 120 mil.
And it barely fits.
Yeah, and it kind of barely fits inside that chassis. All modular, flat ribbon style cables, which are great for small form factor cases. And it's impressive. It's impressive stuff. And we always got to check 66 amps on the 12 volt rail. It's okay.
That's a lot of amps.
It's all right. It'll work. So why do you need an SFX power supply? You only need this really if you're getting a specific SFX chassis, of which, to be perfectly honest with you, there's not a whole lot of them out there. I think they sell adapters for SFX. Is that right, Ken? SFX to like normal size power supplies. You know, you would do that if you already had an SFX power supply and you wanted to use it in a normal case. I don't know if you would necessarily go out of your way to buy that combination.
Just to say you have a smaller power supply.
Yeah, and then mount it into a larger chassis. Seems a little bit kind of crazy there.
Well, I mean, if you've got a top-mounted rad that sort of stretches back and you're like, okay, well, I could get a 120 mil in there or a 240 mil in there, or I could actually get a 480 in there if my power supply was just a little bit shorter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I could see reasons for it.
Yeah, that's good. Fully modular, flat cable design, a lot of connectivity. You know, looks like you've got two graphics cards, 6+8 connectors. I'd like to look at the inside of power supplies.
You should count the screws.
1, 2, 3.
Rodney strikes again.
I will freely admit to feeling like that when I'm talking with my daughters. We're trying to like teach her counting, and I'm like, look, 1 apple, 2 apples, and then I, start to think about.
Well, try not to give her a power supply to take apart to count screws.
Yeah, especially one without a capacitor that's still fully loaded.
Yeah. I mean,
Here, lick this, honey.
It's a teachable moment.
Now, the small, it would definitely be for many people in the audience, or many people that would be standing around. $180 for this power supply. That's pretty steep. It's 800 watts, which is, you know, it's good, but you're really paying for the compactness of this and the titanium level efficiency. So I would say for this unit, make sure you really need it before you decide to buy it. And as you can see here, the strengths and weaknesses as Lee has laid them out. Weaknesses being a 3-year warranty. It was a struggle to meet the 80 plus titanium requirements at high loads, but it did meet it. I almost read that it is 85 degrees Celsius bulk electrolyte capacitors, but it's actually electrolytic, not electrolytes.
Oh, there's electrolytes in there.
Yeah, yeah. It was like, ooh, it's like Gatorade, but don't drink them.
Again, don't lick the capacitors.
And that SFX to ATX adapter plate is sold separately, and he mentions it's $8.99. So if you need that for that purpose, there you go.
Now remember, Jeremy, you can lick the capacitor. It's the coil right next to it. Capacitor holds the power. You could lick that thing till the cows come home.
Unless it's about to blow, you're fine.
Only if it's a 12-volt capacitor.
What if it's not a 12-volt capacitor?
What? No,
you don't want to lick the high-side capacitor.
Come on, microfarads.
Yeah.
How big is one of those big capacitors in MF?
They're might be like millifarads, not micro.
Milli? Really?
Yeah.
Is it more or less than putting a 9-volt battery on your tongue?
It depends on the voltage
it's far more.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough.
You can really seriously, honestly hurt yourself, but you know what it is.
You'll be able to taste colors, though.
This one's blue.
Let's see what's up next. Sebastian posted a review of a Lexar JumpDrive P20, a USB 3.0 $20 flash drive, 32 gigabytes, boasts 140 megabytes per second writes, 60 megabytes. Oh wait, no, hold on. No, he's talking about his old one was 60 megabytes per second. And again, $20. That's pretty cheap.
Yeah,
I guess. So they claim speeds up to 400 megabytes per second read and 270 megabytes per second write.
Yeah, you need a lot of flash to do that, though.
So you think that would be higher capacities where you'd be able to get that?
Yeah, that's the trick.
Okay. I get you. I get you. So like in terms of pricing, the 32 gig is $19.73 on Amazon. The 64 gig is $29.08, and the 128 gig is $49.99.
I mean, that's really dang cheap for a good performing flash drive.
Yeah. 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 And it's not like a super bulky, like big, massive one. Yeah. Like, was it Kingston had that 2 terabyte one? I mean, it's not. That's a little different. I think
it's not tiny either, but like it's.
Yeah. So this is a quick and easy one. Sebastian runs through some of the performance metrics, where he did file copies at 131 megs per second. Wait, no, hold on, wait. What is this? This is writes.
Yep.
Yes, writing to it at 131, reading at 364, which is really good.
Yeah.
Even for the smaller capacity that he got, right? So 364 megabytes per second. Now, obviously, that's one large file being written.
Yeah,
or copied, rather.
Just generally, flash drives won't do awesome if it's like small files, but I think
this is why Alan always yells at me to like zip things up as opposed to copying lots of small files.
Copy 30,000 files across the network. That's not exactly that.
Look, computers should just be able to handle my workload.
Yeah, I know. I think this.
Yes.
The dang silly acronym is escaping me, but the one that lets you do QDepth over
UASP.
USB. Yes, UASP.
I think so.
I think it was.
Yeah, and look at that. Look at those hands. Look at that.
Of course, yeah. There's not enough IKEA furniture in this review. I disagree.
but the bokeh, man, the bokeh.
Yeah, the manicured hands.
There's actually no IKEA furniture.
Zero IKEA furniture. Editor's choice, though. So if you're looking for, this, obviously we don't need to talk about this a whole lot, but if you are in the need of a flash drive and you want one that somebody else has taken a look at and has kind of has measured that it doesn't suck, there you go. Because a lot of times they do suck, as it turns out. Sticking with the tiny mobile storage theme, we're going to now talk about the Samsung Evo Plus.
Are you talking about me again?
Tiny
Tiny little things.
Tiny little storage
little
things.
mobile storage.
This is another quickie for us. The Samsung Evo Plus 2017 model. I think Josh has been drinking a little bit.
Tiny quickie. Way to go, Ryan.
This is 128 gigs, UHS-I, U3 micro SD card. Did you link to in this story your analysis or your explanation of what the hell
What all those
micro
speed grades,
SD, speed grades,
and all that
okay,
stuff.
you did. Okay,
I linked
good.
a couple times to it.
So if you're buying a new
which one's
phone,
the plus and which one's the plus?
Yeah, see, that's what this got really confusing because they sent me
plus
at the beginning of the piece. I'm
plus.
showing a comparison of two 256 gig models of these drives. One of them says Evo Plus with the plus sign.
Sure.
The other one says Evo Plus where plus is spelled out. And they're both 256 gig. They both look identical other than that, but they actually have different specs. The one on the left is a U1 and the one on the right is a U3 class device, which means, it's they can write at a faster rate minimum, basically. The one on the left is at least 10 meg per second. The one on the right is at least 30 meg per second. But it's like, wait a minute. They look like they're the same product, but
no, clearly they're not. This one has a plus sign that is in a superset. No,
superscript.
Superscript.
Yeah,
and this one spells it out.
Right.
Come on.
As I was digging some more, I found in one case the packaging for the 256 gig actually said plus on the packaging, but had the plus sign on the product that was in the packaging, and it actually was going the faster speed of the newer spelled out plus model. So even more confusion there. Anyway,
clearly this one says
confusion.
95 and 90, and this one says 190.
Well, sure. But the older one was only writing at like 40.
Oh.
So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway. So what are we looking at? They're just newer, faster, better. Flash cards?
Better. Basically, so the old ones
more expensive.
There's multiple different. There's a couple of links. I have a link to like the Samsung page on where they have just all their SD cards laid out, and there's like Evo Select. There's just Evo without any plus or anything after it.
Yeah.
Which was the original one. It used to be simple, just like their SSD lines, where you just had Evo and Pro.
Sure.
And then there was another line that just didn't have Evo or Pro, and it was like the slowest.
Sure.
Like how it used to be. There
used
to be like an 840 without an
I
Evo
believe
or a
you.
Pro, right?
Yep.
And then they just kind of started adding more of the names or the labels to it over time, and it got, just kind of more and more confusing.
Yep.
They were gonna they emailed me back on this, and they said, well, we had the plus there, but it was making it very difficult for people to search for it.
It's true.
With the plus sign.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Because search engines would think that you were trying to do some kind of and function with the search, and it's like Evo and what? What do you want? And so Evo Plus spelled out is supposed to make that easier for people, and at the same time that's happening, they're upgrading the specs of the line and making them even faster. So what you end up with is there is a 64 all the way up to 256 gig model. 64 will write at 60 meg per second.
Okay.
128 and 256 will write at 90.
Right.
And then the read speeds are 100. Which is pretty darn good.
Is that like peak of current SD card performance, or is there?
No, there are cards that will go. So this is about as hard as you can push UHS-I.
Okay.
Which is the SD cards that look like you're used to them looking with a single row of pins on the edge of them.
Right.
To get really faster than this, you need a UHS-II card, which has a second row of pins for more parallel, data transfer.
Yep.
So, about as hard as you can push regular, SD card tech that you and I are used to. And chances are you'll be lucky if your camera will actually go that fast. Right.
Yeah, that's what's interesting, right? Because if you look at like the pricing on this too, it's
I was
more
looking at the durability rating.
What?
The durability rating.
There you go.
It's funny. You guys weren't even at this
10,000
office.
mating cycles.
No, Josh.
Ooh, a mating cycle.
Put the spec sheet down, Josh.
That's what it says. It says 10,000
Have you
mating
seen my
cycles.
camera?
Yeah. I know. This is how many times you can stick it in and pull it out. That's what they're talking about there.
Yep.
Sure is.
Card's going to go through a few cameras, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. All right, so
Thank you, Samsung.
So yeah, I did some simple tests on this guy just to see, like, you know, what does the read speed and write speed look like?
Yeah.
Copying files to and from it in Windows, no big deal. And it got, well, Windows always slightly underreports your transfer speed in their dialog. It's as if it's actually doing. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the other way of pronouncing megabytes per second. The one. Yeah,
Megabips.
Megabits.
It's like it's actually giving you that number, but it doesn't say it the right way in the dialogue. So, you know, the same test run, like with Iometer, just doing 128K sequential, actually gave me was 1 meg per second short of the spec or something. So it's basically going full speed. Prices are a little bit high. For these, especially considering you can still find the plus sign version of them for like half the price.
Yeah.
But you have to realize the write speed on those is like 20 meg per second. Whereas the write speed on these is like 80 or 90, right? So
and that's actually like, if you have a camera like the A7S II that's recording 4K 100 megabit, it actually requires you to have a certain classification of SD card.
Right. It requires U3, I believe.
Which is overkill, like if you look at the spec, but you know they're accounting for overhead and all that stuff.
It's potentially greater than 20 meg per second. U3 is a rating of 30.
Okay.
Minimum.
Gotcha.
Right.
Oh, minimum.
Yeah,
right,
it's a minimum. That's the other part of it. That's you know, something to take care of. It has to be a minimum, and there's actually a very specific type of write pattern that it has to be able to do that minimum at.
Gotcha.
And the pattern is supposed to conform to like what's a typical digital.
There's no like similar metric to this for like SSDs, like.
Not really. It's just 30 meg per second. Like, does it go 30 meg per second?
Yeah, like it's I find it interesting that like the U certifications have like specific workloads. Like you have to meet this workload, but I guess their use cases are significantly limited.
It's very limited.
Yeah,
the reason that you get those types of minimums on SD cards is because to fit Flash into something that small and have it be like as nimble, like random write wise, as a SATA SSD or something like that, it's very hard.
Right.
That's why the minimum, you need a minimum just to make sure you can stream video to it if you're putting it in a, like a GoPro or something, right? It needs to be able to handle that raw bandwidth, but it also needs to be able to handle at least whatever small random happens in the background while the streaming is also taking place.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Whereas your regular SATA SSD can handle stuff way better than any of these SD cards could, right?
So 32 gigs, $29.99, 64, 50, 128.99, 256 coming soon.
Yeah, which made it more confusing because there's already an Evo Plus sign out, and it's like $200.
Yeah, and
it has specs that are in line with the specs of the spelled out Plus model. So it's like,
look, man.
Yeah, I don't know.
We can't all get everything.
Here's the thing. At least Samsung is very good about putting the minimums on their packaging. Like if you go back and look at that packaging,
not just the U1, U3 logo.
Yeah, they have those logos and they have class 10 and all the other stuff, like whatever the other requirements are. But they also put your write speed, and they say up to, yes, because it could potentially be a little bit lower. But I mean, they're running pretty close to what they rated at, from what we've seen. So just pay attention. Even if it has a plus sign on the card in the package, if the packaging says the write speed is like 90 meg per second, it's probably one of the new ones.
Gotcha.
Right. Now, all of that said, if you're just buying this to put in your camera or your GoPro or whatever, and it's a thing that doesn't go over like say 20 meg per second, buy the one that's half the cost.
That seems obvious.
Yeah. Just your read speeds are roughly the same between all of them. You're still going to be able to empty the card just as fast as long as your reader's quick enough. So, just buyer, beware, pay attention, whatever.
Something like that.
Look at it before you buy.
So, before we jump onto the Drobo 5 and 2, I have a couple of Patreon shout outs to make. Let's see. Terry Corker edited their pledge up to $5 from $3. Thank you, Terry. Freebaser edited their pledge to $12.34. Thank you, Freebaser.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And Frank has edited their pledge, or is a new pledge, at $13.37, of course.
Wow.
So thank you very much for those guys.
Thank you.
Now, before we get into the Drobo 5 and 2, we just have something that occurred here where I was allowed to publish a story after we started recording.
Yep.
I don't know where to put it in.
Just stick it in.
Just do it here. since I'm already talking about it.
In front of us all.
Yeah.
Sure, right now.
So I'm going to click over to here. So Ashes of the Singularity.
Oh, you got to sign in. Oh, wait.
No, I published it.
Okay.
I was allowed to publish it. As I was waiting for an email response to say I was allowed to publish it. That's why. Ashes of the Singularity posted an update this afternoon to version number 26.118 or whatever it was. It basically implements the performance improvements for Ryzen processors. So if you remember back when Ryzen first launched, there was a big debate about the gaming results that came out of it, and AMD AMD acknowledged the issue and said, hey, look, we understand that there's a problem, especially when you get into 1080p gaming, which is, I believe, still very important. And they came out and said, look, we're working with game developers, and we think there are ways we can improve things pretty drastically given the interaction we can have with these guys. So obviously AMD has a pretty good relationship with Oxide Games, and those are the guys that make the Nitrous engine behind Ashes of the Singularity. And so they've been working with them to implement an updated threading algorithm for the game. I'll be honest with you, I don't have a lot of detail yet on what they actually changed in the engine because I have a lot of questions in that regard. But there was a quote in a press release from Brad that basically says that their development house has always wanted to take advantage of every ounce of performance of the PC. They love having access to more cores, and they actually think that there's going to be room for further expansion of that. And so here's the results we have. And I'll kind of scroll through these a little bit at a time. Ashes of the Singularity ran all this at 1080p, high preset, extreme preset. And you can see the orange bars are the new version, 26.118. The blue bars are the old version, 25.624, the version that was public as of, this morning. And you can see the differences we have here, right? So we're going from 65 frames per second to 85 frames per second. And this is on the GPU-centric test, not the CPU-centric test. I want to make that very apparent, right? This is not this is the one that's emulating what the consumer and the gamer actually sees when they play the game, not like a more synthetic CPU metric out there. And so you can see I ran the test at 2400 megahertz memory, 3200 megahertz memory, and you actually get more improvement with the faster memory as well, which is cool. Interesting. And then at the extreme setting, we've got similar improvements here. It ends up being up to 31% at the high preset and up to 20% at the extreme quality preset, which is a lot for a game engine software patch.
Yeah.
Right. I will note here, I did include one Intel result. It's all I really had time to do tonight for the Core i7-6900K, which is the matched up core to thread count part. I was curious to see, like, okay, did any of these changes either hurt or help Intel's optimization?
It's probably a CPU ID specific.
I would imagine it would be the case, right? Yeah. Or and actually, I'll show you. Here you can see like the multipliers: 1.31x, 1.22x, 1.2, 1.17. Yeah. So solid performance improvements in the game engine. This is a benchmark that emulates actual gameplay. It's not like a 3D mark or a synthetic or something like that. It's actually emulating its own engine. You're using its game engine, its assets, and all that type of stuff. So that's fantastic. Does it's able to do that?
Do we know? Does an i7 do the same thing if you did the same thing with the RAM? Like,
it does not scale with RAM nearly as much. It will. I mean, it does a little bit. And again, I just didn't have time to do it. But like, if we ran it at 3000 or 3200, if I could get it to run, I wouldn't guess. My guess would be a couple of percent.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Probably not the amount you're seeing.
And I think a lot of that becomes down to this graph, right, where we talked about before, where the core complex communication depends on memory performance on the Ryzen processor for thread-to-thread communication. It's not really the case on the Intel part. So, and that's when I asked one of the Oxide developers, like, what'd you guys do? Like, tell me, like, on Twitter, like, this is in 140 characters or less. How'd you fix everything, right? It wasn't really 140 characters or less, right? But he said, essentially, they were for the last 5 years, they had been dedicating their time to instruction traces and analysis to maximize Intel performance.
Sure.
And they had never done that with a Zen-based or a Ryzen processor.
Which works differently.
Right, which works very differently.
Yeah.
And so now they can eliminate poor instruction setup. They can kind of look for things that cause performance stalls, that didn't cause performance stalls on Intel, and adjust for that. And I believe, even though he didn't say this at all, I want to make that very clear, he didn't say that probably some of this comes into play.
I would say some.
If you're managing threads in a way where you can balance their core complex residency a little bit better.
I probably wouldn't blame it all on that. Like, it probably is doing some other things just to better play with the hyper-threading type implementation on Ryzen.
Yep.
Right? There's probably some of that too. Not necessarily crossing core complexes, but...
I agree.
Yeah, but it's optimization, just generally speaking.
It is, and I will freely admit that this is more than I thought they were going to be able to get as quickly as they got it. Now, I also say in this story that it's important for AMD to take like this momentum, this successful result, and actually move forward and do other things, work with other developers, get other games to show these similar optimizations. Because,
well, when it comes to how a game engine operates, like how the code actually executes, it's usually a bunch of, well, not a bunch, but it's reasonably small loops that are just being repeated ad nauseum.
Sure.
Right? So,
I mean, and it depends game to game. Like this, Ashes of Singularity is an RTS game with a ton of on-screen units. And so its loop cycles are going to be more substantial than something like Rise of the Tomb Raider, I would guess.
But like each item would have some set of loops that code runs through, right? So if you find, but it's like, it's generally the same code, it just does slightly different things for each different type of unit or whatever, right? But if you find, if you have the capability to do traces like that and actually plot out, okay, how many nanoseconds is this op taking? In our code, right? If you see something that kind of sticks out as, well, this is taking, 20% longer, and we're repeating it, hundreds of thousands of times per second when this game engine is operating, right?
Yeah.
If
Josh,
you can knock that out.
I'll let you finish here. I'm gonna let you finish. But first, I just want to say, like, this is a good win for them. This is a great showpiece for them to put out a press release and brag about it. But if in 30 more days or 60 more days we don't have another win like this for them, it cancels out. Like it's not a good answer yet, right? Because if we look at Ashes of Singularity was the Mantle flagship, right? They showed the advantages of Mantle, and maybe one or two other games really took advantage of Mantle in any kind of similar way. Now, obviously, Mantle went on to do bigger, better things as Vulkan, but they need to grow on this. Like, they need to expand forward. Josh, go ahead.
I thought you were going to say, but David Cantor is the best CPU journalist of all time. Of all time.
Probably.
Well,
he does overshadow me quite a bit. No, it seems like there's a lot of low-hanging fruit in terms of low-level programming that could really benefit AMD Ryzen. And I think you guys have shown that extensively with the CCX complexes. And they can do a couple of things with threading and data locality with the L1, L2 caches, and L3 caches for that matter. And so it seems like they could get some pretty significant jumps in a pretty small window frame of time if the developers can get these and actually have some guys that know how to optimize code. So it's kind of interesting to see that they had this big of a jump in at least one application. I think that means a lot for them going forward.
Yeah, and getting a result like this out there and public might convince other developers to go, oh, hey, these guys probably didn't look like a lot of work.
Right.
There was some work there, but it probably wasn't a lot. These guys could turn this around so quickly. Maybe we could do the same thing to ours. And,
and that's the thing is, like, to be fair, like, I don't know, they might, because of the way their threading worked in their game engine already, it might have been significantly easier for them to update these changes than for other game engines. I don't know the answer to that. But I don't think I can say which games or engines, but I have talked with AMD about who else they're working with, like, successively, like their next targets for this type of optimization, and they're more substantial. Like there are engines that are going to be in multiple games, those types of things, right? Whereas this is a little bit limited in this regard. But overall, really impressed by it. Really impressed by the speed that they got out there, and that they're not putting their head in the sand. They're not like saying, "Oh, you guys are dumb. You don't know how to benchmark." you know, let us show you how the Ryzen is the best processor ever. They're going forward and saying, hey, we had that issue, we have that issue, and we think we can address it. Here's an example of how we can address it, and that's exactly what they need. So, all right, so that is the breaking news story that we had in the middle of the show. I was trying to get it approved earlier so we could put it in the notes and on the rundown, but we didn't get a chance to do that. So now we'll move on to Alan's Drobo 5N2.
Meow.
5
Can we move on to that meow?
Right, meow?
Yeah.
Right, meow?
I hate you so much.
All right. So
what are we looking at? It's a Drobo.
Ryan, you have not been tickled with Drobo networking appliances generally ever.
I will freely admit that I think the simplicity and the user experience of installing them and setting them up is unparalleled.
Yep.
However,
and I'm talking networked ones.
Networked ones, correct. Yeah. However, well, all of them are good to set up.
Right.
But yeah, my bad experiences come when they sold me one that had a gigabit network connection that ran at 30 megs per second. Right. And so I thought, boo to them.
That was pretty bad.
So now what?
It goes faster now.
Okay.
Like a lot faster.
All right, on to the next story.
So there was a 5N a few years back that came out.
Yep.
It came out at the same time the 5D came out. 5D was like direct connected one. The network one was the 5N.
Yeah.
Right. And they did this cool trick where you could put an MSATA SSD in the bottom of it, and it did caching to try to help with hard drives that were generally slower at random access and stuff like that. Anyway, it performed okay. Still not that great, but it was okay.
Sure.
And came out 3 years ago, so now it's definitely like long in the tooth. You know, so it's time to refresh the thing. So this time they refreshed it. I mean, the usability is still the same. Out of the box, you plug in the drives, you power the thing up. If there's a firmware update, you basically just, this one is the first one I've seen where it basically required a firmware update, like before it would even work.
Right.
Usually it just spins up, creates the array on its own, and it just shows up on your network. All you did was just plug in some drives and fire it up and give it a few minutes, right? But once you're up and running, it's real easy. They've added more features. There's more Drobo apps. You can have this device actually running apps. Sure.
But what are these two things in the back here?
There's 2 gigabit Ethernet ports in the back.
Is that so you can loop it back onto itself?
Yeah, you just loop back. You just transfer data to itself like all day long. So you can connect this guy to 2 networks simultaneously if you wanted to. Two independent networks. 2 independent networks.
All right.
I wouldn't maybe trust it to be bulletproof from a network isolation standpoint, right? But you could share a network share across 2 separate networks
without having to set up a PC as the share.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, without having to do any of that kind of complicated stuff. Or there's a checkbox in the interface. If you go to it's all on the second page, I think, is where the
sure.
I think the bottom of the second page is the interface one where I was talking about the.
We're not going to talk about the multi-language stickers.
Well, I mean,
no, we don't need to. Let's move on.
Yeah. So second page, I'm basically just going through all the Drobo dashboard stuff and the configuration options, and there's Drobo apps, and there's this thing called Drobo DR, which is for like data replication. You can actually point it to another Drobo that could even be external to your network, just somewhere else offsite.
Okay.
And it just does a one-way sync.
Does it have to be another Drobo?
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah,
it can't
Drobo
be
DR
just another data source.
No, it's actually using like their beyond RAID block level management thing as the method of syncing the data, right? So it's able to better, because it knows which blocks have been updated and when.
Does Drobo have like a cloud sync, like a cloud backup? Like, hey,
there's apps that do that.
Okay.
Not with Drobo as a service, right?
Sure.
There's Drobo Access, which lets you remotely get to the Drobo from somewhere else.
Okay, that's
if you
good.
wanted to. But there's other stuff, like Own Cloud, Elephant Drive, like that's for you getting other things for you getting access to it from somewhere else.
Okay.
But there's there's apps for pretty much anything you could possibly want a NAS to do.
All right.
On this thing. Simple checkbox thing if you want dual disk redundancy. Basically, you're switching from RAID 5 to RAID 6. You just check a box.
Their version thereof.
Yeah, their equivalent thereof, right? In other words, 1 drive can fail or 2 drives can fail. But at the end there is this checkbox under the network settings.
Network interface bonding.
Network interface bonding, which usually is like, I don't think you can't just easily do this with Windows. You need like a server OS to do it. So if you were trying to do this on a Windows machine that was acting like a network server and you wanted bonded Ethernet, you would need an enterprise, like a server class, OS on it. What NIC bonding does is it's basically connecting the NICs at a lower level than normal. It's not necessarily the same as multi-link or what you would call like failover for NICs or anything like that. It basically turns them into like striping.
Okay.
So at the switch, at like level 2 OSI, like switch level, right? Your switch has to be able to, I think if you had a very old hub or very, very, very old switch, it might not work with this. But as long as it's, we had our Netgear switches like...
It's probably like 8 years old.
Yeah. It's like an 8-year-old Netgear switch. Worked just fine with it.
Okay.
But all it does is it basically makes it as if those 2 Ethernet ports were 1 from the standpoint of either of them. They can basically send packets alternating, right?
And the host, well...
Now, your host, if it's only on gigabit and you're only using...
still going to be limited to
you're still limited
the same throughput.
By the computer on the other end. But you can start doing things like having data transfers from the Drobo to 2 machines simultaneously and actually getting full gigabit to both, or at least close to full gigabit to both.
Let's see how that lived up to it. Did it do that?
It actually got pretty close.
All right, so if I look at here, the bonded NIC, simultaneous copy from 2 systems to the 5N2. So this is writing to the hard drives.
Yes.
Correct.
One machine did like 92, another machine did like 83.
Okay.
Right.
And considering we're talking about hard drive writes, that's pretty good.
Yeah. You're talking about hard drive writes. I did the same kind of test as the first graphic there with bonding off, and it basically just gave you 112 meg per second divided by 2. To the 2 systems, right? 112 is that number you see if you're used to transferring big files around a gigabit network to a NICs, right? That's just the maximum.
Now I'm confused though.
Yeah.
Why are the copies from the Drobo to these systems slower than the writes?
Okay. It really has to do with what speed hard drives you put in them. And the other thing, which I can't confirm, but it's a working theory of mine, is hard drives have quicker QDepth1 writes than they have QDepth1 reads. Because when you do a write, it writes to a buffer on a hard drive, and then it goes to the disk after the fact. When you do a read, it actually has to get it from the disk and then give it to you, right? And I'm pretty sure that Drobos will not really ramp up the queue to each individual drive, like within the array, right? Higher end hardware RAID cards, like we have an Eureka RAID card in the array, like it will actually transfer, like if you hit it with a bunch of random IO at a high Q depth, you'll see high Q depth to all the disks as well.
Gotcha.
But that's really hardware, RAID card stuff. This is a software implementation of RAID when you get right down to it. So some of the things aren't going to be as fast. However, that's still faster than you would have gotten otherwise. It's still 75 meg per second times 2.
To each system, yeah.
It's still faster than you would have got. Normally, you would have been limited to basically 55, right?
Yeah, I like the next graph where you show reading the same file. It's actually faster.
Yeah.
Because it's taking less data.
It already has the data.
Yeah.
Right? So that's basically was showing that, it was the bottleneck the network connections of the Drobo, or was it actually the drives, right? Same file at the same time went super fast.
So the bottleneck was the Drobo hardware itself, not the network.
Yep. And you can help with the reads if the files are being accessed somewhat reliably, like you're repeatedly accessing the same group of files, like relatively same or small group of files. If you put that MSATA cache drive in there, which this model still has, it will cache things that are frequently being hit. So
it's got a bloody Riverbed thing in there. Like not necessarily Riverbed brand did, but the old Riverbed network caching device.
Yeah, it's just got a little drive slot in the bottom. Like they've done this since the 5D and the 5N. So they've been doing this for like 3 years now. But it's just a MSATA slot. You put an SSD in there. It treats it as if it's another drive in the array, but it doesn't put another redundant copy there. It doesn't use it for redundancy. It just uses it as an extra copy because there's only one of those, right? So it's not going to treat it as another disk or anything like that.
Understood.
Now, with those files on, you know, having read them a couple times, and they were obviously cached on the mSATA device there, look at the speeds. Like, you're doing 101 and 96, and those were two separate files.
Gotcha.
So the same thing that was only going 75 before was going almost 100 now, right? I did catch it doing some kind of garbage collection for its array at one point. I deleted a bunch of big files, and then I tried doing one of the copies. And the hard drive started kind of thrashing away because they were busy. You know, if you have a hard drive in a system, you've experienced this. You do too many things at once, hard drives start making more noise than actually doing things, right?
Using hard drives.
Yeah. So I was able to catch it kind of going a little bit slow. It didn't come to a complete halt, but it dropped to, like, you know, around 50 meg per second for a few seconds, and then it sped back up, right? And then I put a couple of Velociraptors in there, and that's what that one is. And that was with no cache. You know, and the Velociraptors were able to handle random
Well, you're writing
access.
to the 5NT.
Yes, but it was still fast, even faster than writing to, like, 8 terabyte RAIDs.
Gotcha.
You know. So, I mean, overall, like, I was impressed, right? It's you know, it wasn't a gimmick.
Yeah.
It was definitely not a gimmick, that second port. As long as you have a decent switch with the back end fabric inside the switch able to transfer 2 gigabit worth at the same time, which every switch can pretty much.
Go ahead, Alex.
This is not LACP or Ether Channel or 802.11ax. It's proprietary.
No, it's just straight bonded, level 2 bonding.
Right, but you said it worked on an old switch.
Yeah.
Not a managed switch.
Right.
That's not LACP then.
Well, then which one is
it won't be.
Yeah, it's something else. They're using their own proprietary bonding.
I guess.
It's not Ether Channel.
Or they got a translation layer in there and it doesn't look like it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Whatever it is, it worked on a really old switch, and it was seamless as checking one box. So
that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But it's not Ether Channel, because there was a couple people asking about that, and I was wondering as well, because you don't see that behavior with LACP bonding.
What does, like, Windows Server do when you bond two NICs together?
It depends on what switch it's talking to.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's this thing cost?
$500
With no drives.
with no drives.
And that seems, I think for many people that will seem really expensive, but that's, you were telling me before, it's kind of moderately priced compared to
I searched around,
Synology
like,
devices
the
and stuff.
Synology 5-bay box, which you would think is the direct competitor to this guy, right? Probably should be treated as such, is $200 more.
Okay.
So as it is right now, that's cheaper, and, you know, features are decent.
Yeah.
And the RAID implementation is arguably more flexible than a Synology box.
And this can accept, 8 terabyte drives, probably 10 terabyte drives.
The volume size now on these is 64 terabyte volumes. And you're not limited to one volume.
Oh, okay.
You can make another volume.
Okay.
Because it's a thin provisioned
How many drive bays are there?
5.
So I would only need, 14?
And realize you got to take a drive away for the redundancy
yeah.
too. So
Okay.
you
Maybe
need
16 terabyte drives, 18.
And the other thing worth considering is if you're the kind of person that what's very, very forward thinking on your array, and you're like, you only got a few terabytes of stuff, but you're just going to fill this thing full of like 8 terabyte drives and just buy it just for the sake of not worrying about it. Well, say a drive fails. Compared to any other NAS type system, the Drobo Beyond RAID stuff is the only thing that can recover from a drive failure and go back to a normal state.
Right.
As long as you were not filling up all of the space, basically, right? If you only had a couple of terabytes on there and you could deal with a drive failing and still have the remainder of the drives in a RAID 5 configuration with the empty space still holding all of your stuff, it'll just do that on its own. You never knew it happened, right? Your drives could sequentially fail until basically it runs out of the ability to hold your stuff. And it will constantly work to rebuild the parity on its own, right? Like any other RAID, you have to replace the drive,
right,
in order for it, and then wait for it to rebuild, and then only when it's done,
is a very fast
are you
process.
safe again? Yeah.
So
I mean, it's cool. It's cool technology. I mean,
I really do like it, and I would have little to no complaints about using this as like our office NAS now. That performance is reasonable. It's still not like it still bothers me a little bit that I can't peg. Well, okay, did you do a single drive test where like one client is pulling one file off of it?
Yeah,
Is it pegging 110?
Sure.
Okay. All right, that's fine. Because I think the one I saw here was when 2 people were doing it. Yeah. It was 78.
But you have to realize that for something like this, again, it's a like a Marvell, dual CPU ARM implementation thing, and it's not going to be a speedy like a straight line, sure. But if you try to do 10,000 small files to this versus to like an actual RAID,
to a PC with a RAID drive, okay, there's going to be a significant difference.
Yes, there's going to be differences.
Okay,
so
all right, fair enough.
Drobo always kind of markets more towards your photographers. You're putting bulk, relatively large file copy to it.
All right.
And just storing it. You just want it as safe as you can do it, and you probably should be backing up, but most Drobo owners probably aren't backing up. But at least, I mean, this is probably one of the safest. I did back up
to my Drobo.
It's probably one of the safest things as a box holding bits. Compared to any other box holding bits, right? Like it's,
that should be their new marketing name.
Well, I mean,
the box holding.
Remember that original Drobo Pro review?
BHB,
like I did things to that would have bricked any other RAID. Like I was pulling power while it was, I pulled a drive to simulate a drive failure, and while it was trying to figure out what happened there, I'd yank power.
Right.
Like while it was just starting its rebuild, like I would have broken any other array like immediately just from that act alone.
Yep.
And I actually worked at it for a couple of hours just doing different iterations of things, and it still never lost data. So, I mean, that was enough to convince me, and I walked into it super, super skeptical. But
why do you hate hardware so much, Alan?
Why do I hate hardware?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Hate it.
Oh no, if he really hated it, he'd have Ryan touch it.
That's true. I should have had Ryan touch it.
That's beyond RAID.
It would never come back.
Yeah. Ryan has destroyed several RAIDs. He has.
No. I did none of the destruction. They crumbled before my.
Oh, someone in the chat asked if it had a battery backup. So it doesn't have a battery backup like an UPS that's going to keep it fully running. However, it does have a really big capacitor with it's not a capacitor. Tongue here. It's not a capacitor. Contacts. There's like an 18650 cell in there. Okay. That's supposed to be able to hold its metadata, anything that was in RAM, for like a period of days if you lost power, basically. So it has a LiPo. It's probably not made by Samsung, so we're probably safe.
Ouch, burn. All right, moving on to...
Hey, Ryan.
Yes, sir.
Before we go on.
Yes?
Wyoming won tonight, and they're playing again on Friday.
What tournament is this again?
The CBI.
Is that the Miami or Las Vegas version of that show?
No, neither. No.
CBI Las Vegas? CBI?
No.
That was the original CBI.
Real close, though. You're trying hard.
I don't know any other cities.
But the best part is that my team gets to practice tomorrow.
My team's practicing.
And play on Friday.
All of my team is playing the McDonald's All-American game currently.
Auburn.
So they went out for Happy Meals.
Yeah.
I would get a Happy Meal right now.
What?
All right, Corsair, Jeremy, launched a system. The hell's up with that?
The radiator sandwich.
It looks cool.
It does. Because the Bulldog, I was not the biggest fan of the design.
You're not the only one, my friend. There were a lot of people with that, yeah.
But this is
one, on the other hand, looks pretty damn good.
Has a Tron look to it. Pretty cool.
And the reason it's
Punk playing in the background when you boot that up, rock out.
Could do
those
that.
lights blinking.
So the Bulldog is interesting because it was a bare bones system, right? This is not a bare bones system. God, no. They're selling you a whole PC, dog.
Oh, wait a minute. Bulldog
I guess I shouldn't say that,
right? Like, just so we're clear.
Bulldog what?
Didn't the Bulldog sit on its side? Wasn't that the one?
Yeah, it was the HTPC.
Yes.
Like,
so this one's vertical. Is it meant to sit on its side?
No. It's meant to stand like that. It's got vents on either side. You can see a little bit of its exploded view there.
Really cool.
That's why I call it the radiator sandwich, because you can see on the one side, you got a GPU with its RAD. On the other side, you get the motherboard, the power supply, and the other RAD.
That's a cool design.
Really cool.
It's gorgeous.
What are the different spec options on this, Jeremy?
So there's 4 of them. 2 are available now. 2 will be soon, but 2 of those will only be available off of Corsair's website. But you're looking at high-end hardware. All of them are going to do an i7 770 at various overclocks, running between 4.2 base to a 4.5 for the higher priced models. The lowest class is a 1070. All others have a 1080, apart from the brand new Pro GTX 1080 Ti version, which, well, I think you might guess what it has in there.
Yeah.
All of them 16 gigs of RAM, a variety of choices of Corsair Force LE SSDs, which I didn't look too closely into because I was hoping Al had heard of them before.
Force L, yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure they're in our result archive.
Yeah. But the controller didn't come off. I couldn't think of it off the top of my head. But they, from a 240 gig to up to a 960 gig, every single one is based off of a very custom built MSI Z270 mini ITX board. And, well, frankly, they just look pretty damn cool.
I'm trying to get a proper sense of scale from the picture.
Well, here, hold on.
I think it's actually smaller than it looks.
It is smaller than it looks.
Well, look at that's a 1070 or a 1080. That graphics card that stands almost the entire length of the card.
I thought they had a diagram here that showed like it relative to the size of a cat.
Oh,
or something like that.
A little bit big.
Not a banana. Yeah, I don't know, but I mean, it's what, 7 liters? Is that what it is? Is that it?
Sounds about right.
Are we doing more Super Trooper jokes?
Go back up on your article to that. Keep going. Yeah, that
I don't have a liter.
So look at the graphics card.
And strangely enough, that'll be an SFX power supply.
So a little bit taller than a graphics card on its side. Where's the power? Yeah, the power supply is on the right.
Yeah, right on top of the mini ITX board.
Okay, so this is 12 liters in volume, measuring 7.8 inches by 6.9 inches by 14.9 inches. So it's only 15 inches tall by 8 by 7.
Yeah, that's not big at all.
No,
it isn't. It's going to be interesting to see if they can make it.
And the pricing is reasonable.
That'd make a nice, just like regular gaming PC. Just like, you know.
Oh, God, yeah.
I mean, that's not necessarily for like only home theater or only something.
This is not meant for home theater. The Bulldog was meant for home theater. This is not. This is
gaming.
This is a gaming PC. So for $17.99, you get the 7700, not the K, a 1070, 16 gigs of memory, 240 gig SSD, 1 terabyte hard drive, and all the stuff to make those things work.
Not the K?
No, not the K.
That's the lowest class one is not the K.
Can you still overclock the not K on the 7700?
No.
Well, that's
Well, they've already overclocked the others to 4.5.
I would agree with that sentiment. And then you can go all the way up to a 1080 Ti with a 7700K, 16 gigs of RAM, 960 gig SSD for $25.99. And it's, I mean, yes, it's going to be cheaper if you build it yourself. Everybody understands this, but it's like, not so bad. I will be very curious to see, like this is a different beast for Corsair when it comes to support.
Yeah,
and
that's a whole
warranties
system, not just a case.
And like they have seemed to build every single component that goes into building a system for a long time.
That's true.
With the exception of motherboard, video card. Yeah, and then now they partner with MSI and that type of stuff. But like, now somebody's just going to buy this and doesn't really know how to build a computer. And it's worth pointing out, they don't want you to work on this computer. Like, it's not meant to be self-serviceable.
But you should be able to swap a GPU on that computer.
What are you going to swap your 1080 Ti with?
It's got a water cooler mounted to it.
Oh, it's a custom water cooler on the. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but on the flip side, you got a 2-year warranty with 24/7
phone support.
So there's a bunch of self-diagnostic tools built into it, apparently, because the one nice thing about building your own machine is you can make sure that you've got diagnostics exactly where you want them to be.
Yeah.
So you're going to get support with it, and it's going to be interesting to see. I've seen some people that are a little skeptical about being able to pull that much heat out with just 2 radiators and a big blower on the top. Looking at it, I think it's going to work. I honestly do.
It's a nice design.
And
I have pretty good faith in the guys at Corsair. And having known a lot of them for a very long time, I will say generally don't think that they're going to put something out that's going to be garbage.
They don't skimp.
Like I probably wasn't. I'm not a big fan of the Bulldog design either, but that's like taste. Like functionally, it was fantastic. But you know, so that's the Corsair One, which maybe not the best name in terms of like SEO and you know that stuff.
No, they're mixing their Trons and Matrixes together a little.
That's true. It's very true. Intel officially launches for the 4th time Intel Optane memory.
It's a really bad name.
Officially this time. This is the accelerator module. This is the M.2 module that what we have really up until very recently, the only thing we knew that was going to be an Optane product for consumers.
Yeah, it was called the System Accelerator or something on their roadmap.
Yeah.
You know, Optane System Accelerator or something.
Yep.
Right. That was supposed to come out first as a PCIe 3.0 by 2 module, and then later on potentially a by 4 module. But for now, this is the first version.
So we knew most of this stuff. There's a 16 gig version. There's a 32 gig version.
Yep.
It's based on it's using 3D Crosspoint. M.2 form factor. It's going to be a like a caching system for PCs. What do we learn that's new today? Or this week?
That's new compared to what we've talked about before?
Yes, correct.
I mean, I think we have kind of a solid handle on what Intel's intended messaging is on this now and like where it's going to sit for people. Because I've seen just the random chatter around the internet since this news, you know, the actual release broke on this thing. And you get all these like power user guys and they're all talking about, well, why don't you just put everything on an SSD? That's not the market for this.
Because clearly the answer is you should do that.
Yeah.
If that's your if you're even asking that question, chances are you should do that.
Yeah, pretty much. Now I will say that this type of memory is still faster than NAND flash is, even an NVMe SSD for the kind of stuff, you know, for small random accesses and stuff like that. It's still going to beat the pants off of it, especially at the Q depths that most people are operating at, which was another part of Intel's messaging, which happens to coincide with the drum I've been beating for a while now. Like as far as if you look at that second chart there, which you have up already, which is the, you know, they looked at Q depths of you doing a majority of different things, like all the kinds of different things you do in a PC. What Q depth does your...
For consumers.
For consumers. Yeah. Just regular computer stuff, right? And it's pretty much, you know, 99% of it falls below a Q depth of 4.
Yep.
So for all those people that lock in on the QD32 or QD128 figures on your SSD purchase, you're looking at the wrong things because you're never going to hit those. So that was good on Intel for kind of pointing that out and reiterating that. And then if you move down to the next chart there, it shows where an Optane part operates from an IOPS standpoint compared to NAND, you know, PCIe SSDs, SATA SSDs, and even hard drives is on that chart. Just scroll down to the next one. The Optane part just runs at a much higher performance level. That green line there, you know, looking at the shaded area on the left end of that chart, which is Q depth 1 through 4, it's just beating the pants off everything else because it can just respond so much faster than all of the other types of non-volatile storage.
Here's an argument that I would make is that does it matter if you're up here as opposed to down here, as long as you're not down here?
Yeah, because the hard drive is actually...
the yellow line at the bottom, it looks like the axis is actually the hard drive.
Yeah, that's actually a disk. Okay, so... But if you think about, like, the performance difference between a hard disk and a SATA SSD was dramatic.
Right.
And if you put that together with the fact that you were running, chances are, at very low Q depths, Q depth 1, 2, 4, stuff like that, right? That line does not climb very high on that chart at Q depth 1 and 2 for a SATA SSD compared to where it's at now. Even if you consider diminishing returns, it's probably going to be quicker. Like you might be able to see like stopwatch timeable differences between a SATA SSD and this. But this is more expensive. You're not gonna
cost per gig is high.
Cost per gig is way higher.
Did they announce the price yet?
Well, it's supposed to be like $44 for the 16 gig version, and I thought it was like 80 or.
Well, I was asking if they'd actually said that or not yet.
They haven't like officially said like as part of a release. you know, but
so it's going to be more expensive cost per gig. So don't expect to go buy to, you know, you're not going to get an M.2 256 gig version of this.
So the idea here is the market is not people that have their OS and all their games on an SSD. The market is people that just have a hard drive, and OEMs that are putting only hard drives in systems and still shipping them, of which there is still a considerable margin of those. You go to Best Buy and you buy your cheap whatever, Dell, HP, whatever is sitting on the shelf there, it's going to crawl because it's only going to be a hard drive. I
agree with that.
You know,
my complaint about this is if the prices turn out to be correct, then you're talking about systems that are going to be very inexpensive systems, like the ones you're trying to target. If you're asking 10% extra cost,
that's true,
to put on an Optane module for a system vendor, that's not going to work.
That is
right, because like if you look at what those the profit margins are on CyberPower selling a $475 fully built PC, it's probably like $40.
But here's the, I think again it boils down to messaging, because I think an OEM would be apt to have a model like if you had a Dell sitting there for $500 on a shelf, but next to it was an HP for $550, but with some big sticker on it saying that this system is twice as responsive as a system that doesn't have Optane memory in it, right? Which is probably a valid claim. You know, I mean, we only have numbers Intel's given us so far, but I mean, we did a demo while we were there. We sat down at systems and had only a hard disk versus putting Optane in there and turning it on. It's a noticeable and dramatic difference, right? Probably not nearly as noticeable as like if you went from an SSD to that same configuration, like a pure SSD. But we're talking only a $50 addition to a system. It still has like the 1 or 2 terabyte hard drive that it came with. It's still only a C drive, so you know your mom or your parents or whoever you're tech supporting for doesn't get confused by, oh no, you can't put the pictures on the C drive, mom, because they can't fit. You're going to fill it all up. You have to put the pictures on the D drive. Right? See, so think about that. You can avoid all that because it's just a thing that just makes...
Stop copying to the C drive,
Exactly.
Mom.
Yeah, you're going to overfill it and it's not going to be able to start up and whatever. Johnny, what's this Windows running out of memory message?
I don't fundamentally disagree with anything you've said or that Intel has said. I just think $50 is too much money.
Yeah.
I think it's going to end up being too much money.
They're probably not going to charge OEMs the $44.
The reason you can make the argument earlier when RST was a thing and they were selling a 30 gig Larson Creek or whatever the crap the codename SSD was.
It was 20 gig,
You could make the argument for there because like SSDs themselves were so expensive.
Oh, sure.
At the time.
Yeah.
Right? And...
But the thing was, when that came out, because this is going to do a form of that type of caching thing, just again, right? But the reason that... And a lot of people go back to that and say, Intel tried this before and it failed. Well, it failed very quickly, and not a lot of people bought into it at all because that Larson Creek SSD was pure SLC at a time where SLC was still pretty pricey, even though it was only 20 gig of it.
But it was great.
I mean... I
still got one sitting over there on that shelf.
It was okay, right?
I'm going to put it in this drive.
But the problem was, within a few months of that being a thing, you had OCZ, ND-Links, SSDs selling for cheaper, like a 64 gig SSD.
I'm telling you that I thought that made more sense then at the time because SSDs were expensive when it launched. This is like, I don't know. To me, this is very similar to the SD to HD. Oh my God, what a difference.
Yeah.
I'll pay whatever.
Yeah.
Versus HD to 4K where it's just like, yeah, there's a difference. My mom's not going to be able to tell. So she's not going to want to buy a 4K TV anytime soon.
Yeah, this is something that if you're sitting at the computer and doing stuff, you can tell.
We'll see. I don't know that because we don't have a review live, Alan.
Well, we don't. I know. Because we're under NDA on a review.
Embargoes are crap.
But we did get to sit down at one and play with it, and it was good.
But we were testing it against a hard drive.
Yeah.
Not against an SSD. That's what I'm saying. The SSD is 1080p.
I'm not trying to argue, get rid of your SSD and switch to a hard drive with Optane. Like, I'm not. It's just, but for the...
Well, no, but you do a review of that hard drive, and you do it against brand A SSD.
Disconnected my cable.
Sure.
All right. So are we done there?
Yeah.
Let's talk about StarCraft.
Oh, cool.
It's free, right? This update?
I don't know.
Is it?
No?
No, the old one's
kidding
free.
me? Blizzard free?
Okay, that was fair.
So you can get the original one for free now.
Oh, okay, because I saw tweets about this. I had not read the story, but Blizzard announced StarCraft Remastered and a patch. So what's StarCraft Remastered, Jeremy?
It's in 4K.
Developed by a ghost?
Yes. So it's updated to actually scale out to large size monitors, which is bizarre for StarCraft, who likes to keep you on a tiny little monitor so you're not cheating.
Well, that's the question, right? Are you going to see more physical space, or are you just going to see the same things sharper?
You see more physical space.
Really?
Wow.
It's not a huge amount more, but you do see more than you used to on the 640 by 480 screen that we all grew up and loved with. It's interesting. They've also upgraded the cutscenes. Apparently, they're going to bring back StarCraft Original on Battle.net, which should be interesting.
And that one's free?
Like, if you want it to be original, if you want it to look like that.
I forgot what that looked like.
That's fine. Oh, and the 1080p movies, and I'm like, come on, those were some of the best movies.
4x3, son? I played StarCraft and Brood Wars, I would guess 1,000 hours.
A lot. But yeah, so you take a look at it and see that. Go back a little bit.
I can't. I'm going to try.
Yeah. But some of it, like zoom, there is more space. You see more than you used to.
No way.
Which is really interesting because
a bunch of cheaters.
Letting you do that is just weird.
Well, as long as they let you do it, as long as they let everybody do it the same. Well, can you play?
Wait, I'm gonna
probably the same scaling factor no matter what resolution.
Look, it says LAN and modern online play. LAN gaming is back.
Yes, you still can have LAN games with it. I don't know if you can still have the friend play it if you've got the game and you're allowed to have one person on the same LAN
have to do
play
that
it
based on the audience that plays that game.
No, they don't.
No.
What is it? No. UDP play that they had for a long time.
What? What kind of recommended videos are coming up from the StarCraft announcement? Oh my lord!
Well, they're delitting. Yeah. They're both about delitting.
Okay, fair enough. Did they give a price or a time frame on the remastered?
Summer.
Okay.
And around about $20, I believe it was.
All right. Fine.
Take my money.
Fine. I will pay your $20. All right.
My cable pick from last week was in the ads. Sweet.
Moy wrote up a news post about Ada64 getting an updated version to 5.9, which Ada64 is a diagnostic and benchmarking tool. We use it here a lot for, temperature monitoring. Ken was using it today for the terminology of
personal
burn-in.
reasons.
Thank you. Placing a load on a device and waiting to see if it crashes, aka burn-in. This updated version now supports Ryzen, which we had some betas at before, so that's an improvement. It also improves support for Kaby Lake X, Skylake X CPUs.
What are those?
I don't know. It's so weird.
Yeah.
Preliminary support for AMD Zen server processors. So yeah, if you use Ada64, there's an update. It is worth grabbing. It's a very handy tool to have. I guess anybody else have anything else to say about Ada64? Was there an Ada32?
I don't know.
I want to say there was.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that they've been emailing me since Ada32.
Yeah, I want to say, yeah, I agree with that sentiment. All right, our last news story. Where everybody gets to talk to Josh about gloves.
Gloves.
What do we got?
G11.
Are these isotoner? What do we got?
Very close. They're actually, the fabric and a lot of the design was made by Ruka?
I don't know.
Roosh.
R-E-U-S-C-H.
Roosh. It's the Reich group in Italy. They make gloves. Now, initially, an Air Force pilot in Italy had a father who had a stroke. And he wanted to help out in regaining mobility of the guy's hands. So he was kind of a happy-go-lucky electronics hobbyist guy. Mm-hmm. And so he created some gloves with, some a couple of degrees of freedom and mobility and activation. And he was helping his father in rehab with these. And it just kind of built on and on. And eventually he, made a little bit more advanced group. And he started working with, fellow Air Force pilots in some training. And eventually, this Rouge group and him and others have all got together to further improve this to a pretty accurate hand glove control mechanism. So it can do gaming control. It can do VR, AR control.
Okay.
It applies to Android, iOS, PC, Mac, anything with Bluetooth 4.0 low energy connectivity can connect to this glove, and you can pretty much mod it, or not so much mod it, but apply it to any game out there that requires, some kind of controller, movement, pointing, whatever. It's got 10 degrees of freedom. So, you can point it up, down, side to side. You've got multiple
Left, right,
fingers
up.
that will have activations in there. So you can apply that to different buttons, triggers, movement, whatever. And right now it's on Kickstarter. You can get a single glove for $160 in May. I think Ryan might be getting a media preview version here in early May, and use it again with VR, gaming, whatever. It
Whatever.
works. It works
What
with.
if I need 2 gloves?
Well, double is always better, but you know what? It's the first versions coming
$299 for
out.
a pair of gloves.
$299. So 161, $299, and then if you really want highly accurate, you do the $599 version, and it comes
Yeah,
with
if you get the
extra
extra
sensors
sensors.
you can integrate in. So it's an interesting product. It's not horribly expensive. It's not cheap, but it is interesting, and especially if you do VR stuff and you would rather wear a glove like this and control things rather than having an Xbox controller with
Well, sure.
Oculus or the wands with the Vive. It's an interesting option.
Just one step closer to being Pierce Brosnan and Lawnmower Man.
Exactly. There's no haptic feedback yet.
Just lay in a hammock, put on those gloves, put on the VR helmet, and you'd just be flying around in very polygonal 3D spaces.
Polygonal.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what they...
Polygonal, not polygonal.
No, polygonal.
Polygonal. I
How
agree.
was
No,
it?
that was, that's the
it's
newfangled tech,
polygonal
Brian.
in Utah.
So are they machine washable?
If you take the electronics out, which apparently you can do easily, yes.
Smart. That is a smart design.
Yes.
This is a very long Kickstarter page, so there's a lot of detail here.
There's a lot of videos. You can actually see how it works. It's actually quite interesting, and I'd be curious how this works with like tilt brush and other such applications.
Yeah.
That would be
Indeed.
really interesting. Painting with your index finger rather than kind of your wrist with the wands.
Right.
So it's a little bit more finer control, and I'll
Gotcha.
be very curious to hear how it goes.
Cool. All right, everybody. It is time to get into our hardware and software picks of the week. And
Yeah, keep stalling, Ryan. Keep stalling.
hold on. I got to bring up my image. No, don't.
Yeah.
No, hold on. Here's mine.
Actually, before we jump into that, there was a lot of chatter about last week's.
Yeah, there's one guy.
Yeah, well, there's a couple comments on YouTube about it too. One of the graphs, was it for the Optane article? One of the graphs was being reported as in milliseconds, but it was actually in microseconds.
Which
I don't know what's happening.
graph?
It was one of the latency graphs.
But for what? For Optane?
I think it was for Optane.
I mean, those graphs all came from Intel, so...
Ryan Schrock, can you comment about the error last week about the latency in milliseconds when it was in microseconds, not seconds?
You're not telling us where to look.
Yeah, I don't know.
Can't.
No.
We'll answer that in the post show.
That'll work.
Yeah. So, hardware software picks of the week. Here's mine. It's very simple, everybody. Best Buy sucks.
Don't do Best Buy.
No to Best Buy.
Are you just learning this now?
I go back and forth.
What
Because
did they do to you recently?
today I had a Nintendo Classic NES in my cart.
Oh, the shopping cart debacle.
I bet I tried to do the checkout process 15 times.
This is Nintendo sucks, not Best Buy sucks.
No, it's Best Buy's fault. They're the one who like built up this big, we're going to launch them all at noon. Make sure you get ready. We're going to launch on our website at noon. You're going to buy a Nintendo Classic and Switches. Isn't it going to be great?
You act
And
like
then,
you've
oh, wait,
never tried
nobody
to
can buy
buy
it.
a product online that sells out.
Never
in
have I
minutes.
seen
Like-
like non-launch day build up in Twitters and Facebook feeds to it and stories on websites about, hey, make sure everybody gets ready for this, and then I can't buy it.
Maybe Nintendo should just make enough of it.
Maybe
it
they
must
should.
be your first paper launch ever.
It was in my cart. It was literally in the cart. Like the whole, like the website part where like you could browse and view things was all working perfectly. But once you had it in cart and you tried to process the cart, everything went to shit. It was like, it was asking me for my address multiple times. It was telling me I had to pick it up in store. When I clicked pick up in store, it said there's no place to pick it up in store within 100 miles of you. And then I go back to shipping, and it just timed out. And then eventually Lee came to visit me. And after I got done talking to him, I went back to my cart, and the product was no longer available. But it was probably 30 minutes that I was trying to complete a purchase on Best Buy's website.
It wasn't there past.
Do you
the
work
first
for Best
3
Buy?
minutes.
Why are you defending their crappy website?
It's
Yeah,
e-commerce.
Ken. Come on, Ken. Why are you defending Best Buy?
It's how e-commerce
Amazon
works.
can do it.
Bullshit.
Amazon does it just
Well,
fine.
he claims to be
no.
unemployed. Maybe he's looking for a job.
Hit me up,
Best Buy PR
Hit me up.
marketing. Oh, fantastic. Okay, so that's all I got. Let me bring up the rest of the guys here. Jeremy, what do you got for me?
Beamdog's done it again. They've brought back one of the old gold standards in role-playing games, and this one is probably one of the pinnacles ever designed by Chris Avallone. Planescape Torment, they branded the Enhanced Edition. I'm calling it the It Just Works version because Good Old Games brought Planescape Torment back in a way that would run on Windows 7 and above. But you had to mod the hell out of it unless you wanted to play it at 640 by 480. And the mods were not exactly as stable as a stack of Jenga. So you'd get about halfway through and everything would die and you had to nuke it and start again.
Gotcha.
So this one, install it when it comes out. I believe it's April 8th. It's just going to work. It'll play. It's, again, going to look like that blown up to larger scale. So it's not going to be beautiful, but that's not what you're playing it for. You're playing this for one of the first RPGs that came out where you spend a hell of a lot more time dialoguing and making decisions and role-playing than you do bashing the hell out of 6,000 chipmunks so you can collect the 14 blue balls to bring back to someone.
Fair enough.
So it's going to be great. If you've never tried it, I honestly recommend doing it, even if you downsample it to 1080 where it doesn't look too bad. If you've played it before, it's probably going to stand up to what you remember, and you're still going to hate Mort right up to the very end where you're back at the beginning again.
All right. Josh.
Me.
You.
Okay, if you have a 4K TV and a 4K Blu-ray player, probably Planet Earth 2 is the title you want. It's a little expensive.
$40.
$40.
American
shot. Not only is it shot in 4K, but many scenes are shot above 4K.
Is it HDR?
So, unlike some others that are like, this was shot in 3.4K. This was shot a little bit more lower than that and upsampled. No, this is the real deal. I'm kind of curious what HDR will be like. I don't have any HDR playback stuff.
Yeah, just say HDR on the
yeah,
box
so
there.
it's if you want kind of the pinnacle right
buying
now
it right now
of 4K playback with physical media.
Yeah, I'm just
Very-
going to stream it because I'm not buying a 4K Blu-ray player.
Whatever. Buy an Xbox One S. Be
No.
happy.
Don't use my
Okay.
regular Xbox One.
Hey, but what if you
then.
could have two that you don't use, but one of them plays
Ooh.
4K HDR?
Yeah, yeah.
Think about it.
So
And
anyway,
the dogs will love it
it's,
too, right?
Stunning.
Cool.
Stunning.
Now, so Planet Earth 1 probably wasn't shot in what? Was it a
It
shot?
was one of the first HD things.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Like
it was,
the first
it was a
big
2K.
It was one of the
Right.
first Blu-rays I
Yeah.
thought. Yeah, right? Yeah. Okay.
Like
All right.
first 1080p.
Plus, it's got David
showcase.
Attenborough in it, so there you go.
It's all got David Attenborough in it.
Alan.
Yeah, so I'm working on my basement.
Still, eh?
Still.
Okay.
And I don't know anybody that does any kind of woodworking or like trying to frame something out or whatever, and you're trying to get around something. There's a shape somewhere that you need to cut wood around the
Yep.
shape, but you can't mark the exact shape on the piece of wood.
It'd be very
Because
difficult
you
to
can't get
do.
the wood in the place because it doesn't fit in the shape. It's a
That's
catch-22.
why you have like paper templates.
Well, or this thing, which is like
I was going to say,
even more of a fraction of the time. Well, I mean, even if you tried to make a paper template fit in there, you'd have to like make it fit and cut pieces off of it and whatever.
don't agonize, angleize.
So somebody just makes a thing that you just basically, you loosen all the four knobs on it and it just kind of flexes around to whatever shape, you just make it, sit it in the place where you're trying to measure the
Right.
shape off of.
Right.
You tighten down the screws.
And then you take
You
it
pick the
over
thing
and
up,
trace
take it over and trace it on the other
Did
thing.
you not just have like a box full of erector set parts you could have used for this?
I mean, I probably could have. No, it was a sad event when I moved from New York to Florida when I was growing up. My grandparents threw away my box of all the random Legos and like erector sets and Lincoln logs, and it all got trashed. And I
Yeah.
was very upset for like
Damn
months.
them.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, so all that's gone. But to get back at them, I've purchased this for myself. It's actually bigger than it looks in. Like it's actually like it's like
You're
almost a
saying that
foot
guy has
long.
really big hands.
Yeah, like it showed up and it was a larger thing than I thought it was going to be, which is not a negative. That's actually a positive. That's bigger, right, Josh? But
Continue.
but it's come in handy multiple times, like more times than I thought it was going to come in handy for. Since I got it, so there you go. It's like 20 bucks.
Don't agonize, angleize.
Yeah.
What's wrong with my
legal in
eyes?
13 states.
Alex, you have a pickup here.
I do.
What do you got?
This is Shadow Tactics, Blades of the Shogun.
Okay.
There were...
Oh, they got the demo?
Yes, it has a demo.
Oh, sweet.
Yes, they had the demo before launch. It was amazing. Fully cross-platform, OS X, Windows, Linux, SteamOS. Beautiful, beautiful game. Runs great. It's described as a hardcore strategy game, tactical game.
Wait, it looks like the old Commandos.
That's exactly,
Did you ever play that?
That's exactly what it plays like.
Yeah, and I looked at because they did sequels to that, which I did not enjoy, but the original one was just brilliant.
Yep. There was also the Desperados series.
Yeah,
in the same
there was
vein?
there was a Robin Hood version.
There was.
Oh, it was not good. It was not good.
This game, I have died more times than anything else, but it has been the most fun dying I've ever had.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Cool.
So yeah, they have a demo. It's on sale, 25% off on Steam.
Can you get is the demo on Steam too?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
So.
Shadow Tactics, Blades of the Shogun. All right.
And the characters in it are quite interesting. What they do is not maybe what you'd expect even from a strategy game. Like when I watched the couple of reviews and like, okay, that's not what I expected, but I could totally use that.
It's different.
Yeah.
Sometimes we need that.
The funniest part for me is imagining a samurai in full battle armor hiding in a bush.
Which I just saw in their video, actually.
Yes, you did.
That's a big bush.
Nice. Josh.
Right, Josh?
No, not going there.
Okay.
This time.
70s style.
We have crossed Josh's line, folks.
Or he's just tired. Speaking of which, that's the end of our episode, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the PC Perspective Podcast. The only thing I will say here at the end is Everything you need to know is at pcper.com/podcast. RSS, video files, YouTube links, subscription methods, show notes to all the stories we talked about, et cetera, et cetera. All of that is there. pcper.com/podcast. We thank you guys for joining us today, and we'll see you next week. I'm Ryan Shrout.
Come to the VLAN. I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
I'm Alan Molentano.
Bye. If you enjoyed this content, consider supporting in-depth technical content by contributing at patreon.com/PCPer.